What's up, guys? Welcome back to Newswave. Now, the winners for the clocks have been chosen. I will announce those later on today in a separate video. For now, let's talk about some of the stuff that happened in the news yesterday, guys. Let's get into it. And the first bit of news today should not be surprising to anyone. I think we all saw this coming, and that, of course, is surrounding the Super Nintendo Classic, specifically the one we were able to pre-order the other day in Europe. It went up, sold out very quickly. Like, we're talking like minutes. It was done, and you could not get any more. And what do you know? Some are already popping up on eBay. Now, people don't like when I use the word scalping these things for some reason. Like, if I say this person's scalping a Super Nintendo Classic, they don't like that phrase. I guess I could say fleecing, so we'll go with that. People are now fleecing Super Nintendo Classics on eBay. And it's interesting because eBay's policy, as pointed out by several people online, and I've seen it before, so it's not surprising, is that you have to be able to ship the item 30 days after purchase for anything that's able to be pre-ordered on there. And of course, Super Nintendo Classic is about 3 months away, so that doesn't fall in line at all, and that's probably why these are being ripped down from eBay rather quickly. So they'll kind of pop up, and then they'll go down, and then they go back up. In fact, I've seen them anywhere from $300 to as recently as $249.99. So they are getting a fair markup considering they're $80. I mean, they're just getting it for $80, the pre-order, and then they're marking it up 3 to 4-fold and then putting it out for people to buy. And like I said, this shouldn't be surprising. I think we all saw this coming because of what happened with the Nintendo Classic. In fact, it's probably going to be harder to get the Super Nintendo Classic even if they make more, because now everyone knows you can just get those systems and you can just flip them for tons of cash. And it's already happening. I cannot believe this is already happening. It's amazing. Here's the real issue. While it's allowed, obviously, you're allowed to do this. It's a free market. The problem I have is that there are going to be people, much like what happened with the NES Classic, who just will not get the system simply because some jerk bought 5 or 6 of them and they are now holding them at a healthy ransom of, like I said, $250 to $300. And it's really tough to see this happen because that system, the Super Nintendo Classic, is going to be very interesting to a lot of people. The NES Classic, sure, a lot of people wanted the NES Classic, but the people who are like in their prime to buy the system remember the Super Nintendo better than they do the regular Nintendo. I know I do. I remember the Super Nintendo heavily, and I really want one of these systems. And now I'm starting to realize I better start saving up now because I am going to probably have to pay through the nose for this system. And it's a shame, but at least I know. At least I know now. With NES Classic, I had no idea. None of us did that it would get to that point. But we're all prepared now. It's a shame to see people do this. Here's the thing. If you buy one and you resell it, you know what? I don't care. But if you're in line at Walmart and you buy 6 of them and the people behind you don't get one because you were a jerk and bought multiples of them, that's a problem. I don't like that at all. Buy one, resell it, whatever. Don't buy 6 or 7 and deprive people who actually want to play the thing from playing it, because you're just going to buy them and then you could seriously turn around in line and then sell it to them for $200 and the people would pretty much be like, well, I don't have a choice. The one good thing is the Super Nintendo Classic is coming out a few months before Christmas, whereas last year the NES Classic came out seriously in like the first or second week in November, so there was no time at all to get more stock in. That's why the price was driven up so high, because it was just, there were so many out there, they got snapped up, and then that was it. At least with the Super Nintendo Classic, we have time. If the initial run gets pretty much decimated like we assume it will, even before it comes out with pre-orders, although Walmart, Target, Best Buy, I don't think they'll do a lot of pre-orders. I think they'll just do notifications where you can get notified when it shows up, or in my case, I go to Walmart and wait in line for the thing. But at least we know, right? So if it gets sold out, they at least have October and November probably to restock both months, and then maybe even early December. So they have time to get possibly 4 to 5 million units in stores before the year's up, because they don't want it going past this year is what they've been saying. Like, we may have this thing discontinued in January or February, which sounds crazy, right? But that's just the way Nintendo wants to do it. At least we know ahead of time. That was the big problem a lot of people had with the NES Classic. We didn't know it was supposed to be limited edition until it was pretty much done and we couldn't get one. We know we can now plan for the Super Nintendo Classic, and we can try to get around people who are scalping or fleecing these things within reason. Let's stick with the Super Nintendo Classic real quick, guys. Specifically over in Japan, they are getting a different version, a Super Famicom version, which, by the way, the box looks awesome. It looks very, very authentic, very similar to the original Super Famicom, which I like a lot. Of course, I love the look of this, but it looks very similar to the European model as well. But what's interesting about the Super Famicom model is they're getting different games. And those games include Mystical Ninja, Panel de Pon, which is kind of like a Tetris style game, and Super Soccer have been added. But to make room, they've had to remove some games. These games include Castlevania 4, Punch-Out, and Kirby's Dream Course. You know, looking at that, I think that's actually a bad exchange, to be honest. The substitutions there aren't good. I really think Castlevania 4, for example, and Punch-Out are much better than some of the games they just listed. Sure, Mystical Ninja is great, but like Super Soccer and a Tetris-style game over Castlevania 4 and Punch-Out seem kind of, I don't know, that's not a good trade-off. Although the system and the box looks great, I feel like the collection of games in the United States and what I assume to be Europe are going to be much better than what Japan gets, which is odd because usually it's the other way around, right? Next up, we have Yooka-Laylee on the Switch, and this is something a lot of Switch owners have been waiting for because obviously PS4, Xbox, and PC users all have this game, but Switch users have kind of been on the outside looking in. Now, if you have not already bought this game, it was a good game. It had some issues, but overall, it seems like it would make a really cool portable game, like one you could take with you. But we don't know much about it. Nothing has been put out there for dates or anything until today. We now know Playtonic has at least entered the testing phase for the Switch, which is important because that means we're probably getting close to the final release date where they actually put out a solid date and we know when it's coming out and you can go pre-ordered. Well, they had this to say on Twitter. For those asking, with this game update complete, we're now entering console and Switch specific testing and should have final date shortly after. Well, we at least know, or we've known for a little while, that it was going to hit the Switch in 2017, and this tells me that it's coming up sooner maybe than later. So we might see it, let's say, in September or October. That seems fair, I think. I don't think it would be pushed anywhere to November or December. I would expect it in those early kind of fall months. So we'll keep an eye on this to see when Playtonic actually comes out with a date, but I would expect a solid release date to be announced sometime in July. Next up, we have a massive speedrun. I mean, this is an insane speedrun. We're talking 5 Mario games, 982 stars, and 25 hours of continuous gameplay. Over the weekend, a speedrunner who usually plays on Twitch by the name of Value had some interesting ideas with Mario. One, they do run through all of the Mario games in order pretty much and just get basically 100% completed. And in this case, they were playing a couple different games, including Mario 64, Mario Sunshine, Mario Galaxy, Mario Galaxy 2, and then after finishing all of those, they decide to then attack 3D World, finishing that as well. So it was just a massive marathon speed run. The whole thing is on Twitch. Yes, it is 25 hours of continuous Mario speedrunning, which is crazy to think about, but they did it, and this actually beat their old world record of 27 hours. So they've done it before, and they did it again in much faster time. That's some perseverance that I think I would have a hard time doing, much like any of us, really. It's very impressive. Good job to Value. I think it was really cool to see these kind of speedruns that really test the endurance of a person, really mentally and physically, obviously, whereas you're getting Prey beaten in 7 minutes. I have a strong feeling a lot of those speedrunners wouldn't even attempt something that's considered a speedrun in 25 hours. And in our last bit of news, we're going to talk about Ubisoft and Vivendi. If you have not been following this ongoing tale of a massive hostile takeover that seriously has people concerned in and outside the company of Ubisoft, it's been pretty insane because now Vivendi, it keeps creeping up further and further, and there have been a lot of people concerned that Vivendi is going to look to take control of the entirety of Ubisoft later on this year. Like seriously, before December, we may see a Vivendi-controlled Ubisoft. However, it looks like the founding family of Ubisoft is not going to go down without a fight, and with good reason. Vivendi, if you're doing a hostile takeover, they're going to fight you tooth and nail. You need to expect this. And at this point, the Guillermo family decided, let's just increase our stake in Ubisoft, the company, and that's exactly what they've done here. So according to a report by Reuters, the Guillermo family decided to increase their stake up to 13.6% by purchasing more shares of Ubisoft. This now gives them control of about 20% of voting rights. So they can vote more, obviously, than they could last year, where they only owned about 9% of shares. And this is pretty much because Vivendi has done nothing but increase their stake in the company, which is now up up to 27%, and they control 24.5% of voting rights, and they're just looking to get to a certain percentage where they can attempt to then buy out all shares that are left to have a majority lead of everything. Voting rights, shares, stake in the company, everything. And this has really been scaring them. Ubisoft and really everyone in gaming, because think of it with Vivendi, a company that maybe doesn't care about the quality of the games that are going out. They just want to get as much money as they can. So a lot of people are concerned everything with microtransactions, season passes are going to be heavily accelerated when Vivendi takes over, because in their mind, gamers, I mean, everyone is pretty much just a cash cow, and they will do whatever they can, you know, PR be damned, to get as much money from us as possible. While most companies do this, they at least understand that there is a give and take with gamers, right? You know what? The reason there's free DLC out there for certain games, it's because if you paint a bad picture to gamers, they won't buy your stuff. Right? Now, if you control certain franchises like Assassin's Creed, for example, where people just cannot help themselves but buy into it, you're pretty much going to do what you can to make a $60 game turn into a $200 game. And trust me, Vivendi will look at that as hard as possible and figure out a way to do 2 season passes, you know, stuff like that. And this is not the first time that Vivendi has taken over a company by force. They took over Gameloft from the same family. So now they are looking at their attempted hostile takeover of a larger company in Ubisoft as almost like in their words, an unsolicited and unwelcomed threat. And at this point, at least they're fighting back, because I would hate to see Ubisoft really come under control of Vivendi. I know a lot of people really don't like Ubisoft at times, but after you see kind of the passion they put into their E3 presentation, and you could just tell that they loved making games. It was a different side of Ubisoft that a lot of us had not seen before, and I do think this hostile takeover from Vivendi is a real reason. I think a lot of them were kind of sitting in their chairs realizing that this might be it. There might not be a next year at E3 for them, because if Vivendi does a hostile takeover, they're going to look to do things like layoffs heavily, because the first thing you do when you take over a company is start lopping off expenses. Can, you know, one person do 2 people's jobs? Yes, one of them has to go. That's how it is when you have a corporate entity like Vivendi come in and take over another corporation like Ubisoft. It's obviously they see all the employees as new, faceless, really expenses. So it must have been scary for them. I really do hope Ubisoft continues to fight and just try to keep Vivendi kind of on their heels if they can. Unfortunately, I have to say, I do think Vivendi will eventually win and will take over Ubisoft. It's just a matter of time. And that's it for Newswave today. Let me know what you think about anything we talked about today. Whether it is the Ubisoft-Vivendi clashing, where, you know, Vivendi's trying to take over Ubisoft, but Ubisoft's trying to fight them off a little bit. Are you concerned about the Super Nintendo Classic already being scalped or fleeced? In this case, before it's even out, like 3 months before it's out. Does that concern you? It concerns me. I get really worried that I won't even be able to get one because someone in front of me in line will buy 6 of them and make off with those, and I don't get one. It's a shame, because I actually want to play it. I don't want to resell it for a bunch of money. That's just, I want to play Mega Man X. I want to play Mario World. I want to play Star Fox 2. That's it for now. I'll see you guys next time.